Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's show. Now, we had a special guest lined up who unfortunately has had a sort of family health problem, so can't make it. But we still do have a very special guest. Our very own chairman is joining us, Michael Willis, in just a little while. But just before Michael joins us, I'll just give you a quick update on what's going on with the family party. Now, obviously, after the election, the activity isn't as frenetic as it was around the country. Some branches are going to have meetings within the next month or two, so there'll be an opportunity to meet face to face. But some things are going on in the background as well. The leadership team, that's 6 of us, we're going to have a long strategy meeting one Saturday coming up in June. And one of the things we're going to look at after then is having another round of appointments. It's about a year maybe now, maybe a little bit more, that we had a round of appointments. We said various positions are vacant, if you like, or people can apply for various responsibilities. That's where we appointed our chairman, deputy leader, etc. So we're going to be having a similar round with some new roles. So if you're interested in getting more involved in the family party, then do keep your eye open in our newsletter. If you'll get our newsletter, do sign up for it. If you don't get it, you can do that via the website. And keep your eye open for the opportunities that are coming up. Right, well, I've got lots of things to talk about this evening. We're not going to get anywhere near through them, but do keep the comments coming in. We will interact with the comments as we're going along. Don't see any comments yet, but I'm sure they're going to come in thick and fast any minute. So, first of all, welcome to Michael. Right, good evening.
Hello, Richard. Good evening.
Looking sunny in Stirling there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful evening. Lovely sunset. I should be out playing a few holes of golf, but this is far more important.
Absolutely. I'm just going to turn my light on. I'll look a bit fuzzy. Right, that's better. Sharpened up a bit. Right, thanks for joining us this evening at the last minute. So we'll look forward to hearing your take on the issues of the day as well. So still no comments. I thought this last week. There was no comments for a little while. I thought there was no one watching. But then lots of people came on and said hello. So we'll look forward to seeing some comments. Right, we've got a huge list of things to talk about this evening. I thought I would start with something I've been working on, making a video today. The video is going to be released tomorrow night. So you can see the full story there, but I thought we could have a little sneak preview and hear Michael's take on it. And that is about the issue of monkeypox. Now, I'm sure you've been following that. I mean, there have been cases of monkeypox in quite a few Western countries where it isn't normally prevalent. So it's been quite surprising. They've been trying to trace the transmission to work out how it's been happening. And to cut a long story short, the transmission's been traced basically initially to a sort of gay sauna in Spain. It then spread to a sort of fetish festival in Belgium. Both of these were sort of international events. So they attracted people from all over the world to partake in the activities that I understand people do at these events. And then these people have traveled back home and taken the infection with them. That's why it's popped up all over the world. So far, a lot of the transmission has been through men having sex with men, basically. And we assume in some cases sort of promiscuous sex as well with men. So that's what's been spreading. Now, the point I was making in the video is very interesting, that no one seems to be given the advice that if you want to avoid this, don't have promiscuous sex. Maybe this is not the month to go to like the gay orgy at the local sauna. Now, in terms of health advice, it's just blatantly obvious. That's how it's been spread. That's where it's been spread. They're the people generally who are infected at the moment. So that's the obvious advice. You need to stay away from this sort of activity. But will anyone say that? No. The health spokesman of the various organizations looking at this, they're specifically saying that they will not advise people not to have sex, because that's just wrong. You just can't do that. That's just beyond the pale to say to people, you really shouldn't have sex or go to a gay orgy in order to avoid catching this disease and spreading this disease. It can be very dangerous for children and unborn children as well. So, Michael, what do you think of that? I mean, it's strange how reticent these health authorities are to issue any guidance, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, once again, Richard, I mean, you're spot on with the inconsistencies of this. I mean, we were told a couple of years ago to stay away from Granny because we might kill her, and we weren't allowed to visit her in the care home. And I mean, I was laughing about the fetish festival in Belgium, and Belgium's such a crazy place, and I suppose it's the natural home, probably in Brussels or Antwerp, to have this international fetish festival. So utterly bizarre, and of course, the first response must be this is a dangerous activity to attend this, participate in this event, and yet everyone's hands are tied and they're tongue tied, and they can't point out the obvious.
Yeah.
This is dangerous. Don't do it.
It's dangerous at the best of times.
Yes.
Forget monkeypox. It's extremely dangerous activity in any case. But the other thing they're saying as well, they're saying they're very concerned because there's a lot of festivals and mass gatherings coming up in the summer. So I looked into that a little bit more. And what are they talking about? They're talking about Pride Month. They're talking about the cycle of Pride events, which involve a lot of gay men circulating, going to these different events, and there'll be lots of fringe activities, shall we say. So that's what they're worried about. But they won't say, please think twice before having promiscuous sex. So they're saying, be very cautious if you're going to big events. So in other words, if you're going to Italy to see the Pope it's St. Peter's Square, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, I said St. Mark's in the video. Right, apologies. To St. Peter's Square, a mass gathering. Do you need to be worried? When I'm going to go and watch a motor race in Belgium with my son, do I need to be worried because it's a mass gathering? See, that they will not name the actual problem. They're actually explicit about it. They say we cannot tell people or advise people not to have sex because that's just wrong. It just is, it's in principle. You just should not do that. I mean, what do the lockdown rules cover? I mean, singing, chatting to someone in the park. It's just
going to a funeral, going to a wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about, in Scotland, of course, we've got two big events coming up: the St Andrews International, the golf tournament, and we've got the Fringe coming up in Edinburgh. And I mean, very cunningly, the Scottish government are not actually going to let us go there anyway, because they're stopping all the trains are not running. They've taken away all the services, so we can't get into the festival. Well, we could, but we couldn't get back out again, and we can't get to the golf in St Andrews because of the inefficiency of nationalising these railways, and under the SNP, and that they immediately went out on strike. So that's slightly left field. So we're not allowed to attend.
Yeah, can we come back to that now? I've just got one more thing to say about the monkeypox. The other about these LGBT activists who are basically saying it's just wrong to tell people not to have sex because there's a decent chance they're going to catch a serious illness. It's wrong to tell them that. Do they really care about men who have sex with men? Or is their attitude they really don't care if they get ill or not? What's the important thing is their message that your homosexual sex is just the same as the other sort, that there's nothing unusual about it, no special risk. So that message comes first. Actually protecting people from illness, they don't seem to care.
Yeah.
They don't seem to care.
Yeah, which is the caring. That's the caring response, isn't it? That we don't want to. We want to reduce the risk, reduce the harm, and that would be the natural reaction. But they're just terrified of demeaning or minimizing gay sex.
Yeah, but if you look at what they say, it's actually about sex in general. So you think, these are the same people who are involved in sex education in school as well. It's the same sort of forces at play. So they also think the idea of saying to people you ought not to have sex, well, that's just wrong. You need to say to people, you just have sex whenever you feel like it. And then the important thing is you've got to direct people to the appropriate services when it goes wrong. But for the railways, right? Very interesting, the railways. Now, the SNP have only just taken them over. The government's only just taken them over. Now, the pay dispute, was that already brewing? Or was that brewing in anticipation of nationalisation? Or is it a bit unfair to say they're connected?
Well, we've known there have been a number of sort of background disputes here, and we know that the service, there's been problems with the service levels, and you wonder whether this is all being precipitated, and that that they're expecting the government to cave in, because it's causing so much harm, isn't it? People can't get to work. People can't get back home. That's the biggest problem. They're working a shift in Edinburgh and can't get a train out, into the suburbs, back into West Lothian or into Fife. The last train's leaving at 8, and people are finishing their shifts at 7:30. It's catastrophic.
Well, I found with trains for the last couple of months, I'm normally quite happy with the train service. Now, I'm not a big complainer about trains, because normally, I buy my ticket to go on the journey and it's absolutely fine. Within the last couple of months, every time I've tried to travel by train, it hasn't happened as planned. It was either completely cancelled, or it didn't quite get to where it was supposed to go, or the station I was trying to go to was closed, or something. But every journey hasn't happened. But what I always say is right with nationalisation. If you work for a business, if you want more money, if you want to get paid more, well, you have to make the business more efficient or whatever. But if you're working for the government, then the way to get more money, as I see it, is to threaten strike actions. The union that determines your pay, whereas in a private enterprise, it's the market that determines your pay. So there's always going to be the danger of inflated salaries in nationalised organisations, which I think is controversial. Well, this is just factual. Doctors in the UK are the second highest paid in the world, certainly the highest paid in Europe. And you see occasionally the doctors' union in the UK just threaten strike action, whatever, overpay, and I think that's what it results in. You end up with basically salaries higher than the market would otherwise sort out when you have a nationalised industry, and with the trains, it seems to be happening immediately.
Yeah. So that's three big scandals, isn't it? The ferries, the trains, and that item on the education side where they're dropping this, the main plank of their education policy. The attainment gap.
Just one last shot on the trains.
Do
you think that will really cut through to people? I mean, the ferries don't affect that many people. The trains do. You're talking about a substantial portion of the population there. So I think that might cut through a little bit more than the other issues. And people would actually hold the government responsible for that. But we'll see. But the attainment gap,
Sadly, it all happened, it happened after the local elections, didn't it?
The other thing, just staying on the railways, I saw something, was it Stephen Daisley maybe wrote a piece, and he said that the MSP, is it Gillian Martin, in charge of ScotRail now, and before she was an MSP, she'd been an MSP for maybe, she's just going into her second term, possibly. Before then, she was a modern studies teacher. And I just think, if you were running a business, if you are, as you have been in the past, if you're on the board of directors of a major organization and you're appointing someone to have oversight of a huge, complex organization like that, you're needing someone with a pretty clearly defined set of skills on you and some pretty exceptional qualities.
I mean, that's really a tough portfolio for anyone, and many ministers, both down south and up here, have fallen on their swords with the transport portfolio. So for someone, and this reflects the total lack of depth at ministerial level within the SNP, that they just haven't got the talent, and of course that's a weakness in our system, that amateurs can suddenly become head of head of these functions, like transport in Scotland, and some do very well, but she looks a little bit light, doesn't she, on the main skills?
Yeah, I tell you, if you've got someone who really is, very, very sharp, and they take that on with the mind that, right, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to get some people who really do alongside me. That's my first job. I want people with real experience in this area, and I'm going to, I've got a lot of learning to do, and I'm going to get on and learn it and try and master it. I mean, it's feasible that someone could take something like that on and do a good job. But again, you've got to have a lot of qualities. It's got to have a lot of raw material to be able to do that. And I think in the Scottish government, it's often just not the case. I would imagine that the people at the top of the organizations must be often tearing their hair out with the minister who's appointed over them, because they just understand the issues so much better, so much more deeply than the person at the top.
I mean, it's a really tough nut to crack, that one, and what a start! A national go slow, and the likelihood, though, is that they'll cave in. The government will cave in pretty quickly to a major wage demand, which will act as a multiplier right through the public sector, and will set a marker for everybody else to meet at the very least, or exceed.
I mean, train drivers at the moment apparently get paid, I don't know if this is average or 50,000 a year. And apparently, I've heard that the training to do it is a year and a half long. And I find both of those things quite difficult to comprehend, really.
Yeah.
But that's the situation they're in. I'm sure the unions are thinking their job is to just get the highest possible pay for the members.
Yeah.
So let's see how that develops. Right, good point from Jerry here. Hello, Jerry. Once we get 16-year-old MSPs, that might ease the problem a little bit. Now, I tell you, when they do get their 16-year-old elected, they'll be very keen to make them a minister as well, just to show how even more enlightened they are, to break the record for the youngest ever minister in the world or something. So, Jerry, don't give them ideas, but they've probably already got that idea. That's what will happen. Okay, other issues we've got. I mean, there's a story this week. So the attainment gap. You said about the attainment gap, didn't you? That the SNP have dropped their timetable for dealing with the attainment gap. Now, I was looking into this week, and I came across something very, very interesting that I don't think I'd seen before. And it was the idea that if you improve the quality of education, then the gap between the most able and least able students gets wider. Which is obvious, really. If you take all the kids and don't teach them any maths at all, then at the end of the year, they'll all be about the same. If you just teach them, counting to 10 and a few other things, then everyone will be able to do it. But the more advanced, the better your education, the more it's going to spread out the ability range. Because you've got someone who's really, more limited in that area. They're really not very good. Okay, you can give all the support you can, all the encouragement you can. They'll reach a certain level. The person who's really talented, give them all the support and educate them as far as they can go. Then that widens the gap. So the SNP's target is basically it's the equivalent of saying we want to reduce the quality of education, because that's what would close the attainment gap. And that is what they've been doing. They've been trying to make it so that everyone gets the same. If you reduce the quality of the education, there's not as much that you can achieve, then the results are going to get compressed and they can claim they're making progress. But even by doing that, though, they've barely made any progress in any case with it.
Yeah, that's good analysis, Richard. And then for them to just sort of drop that with no no real repercussions from the teaching unions, from the Education Institute Scotland. They've just accepted it, and it's a bit of bad news they've thrown in, and life seems to just go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what they haven't acknowledged, because Education Scotland, the unions, GTS, I mean, all the teaching colleges, they're all the same. They all think the same. So they all think closing the attainment gap is absolutely should be the central goal. But I think the government's realised it's not going to happen. And the deadline they've set, just forget it, because they're getting nowhere with this. Even though they've watered down things and made things easier and easier, it's just not happening. But what I haven't heard from anyone within the educational establishment is saying, oh yeah, we've actually realised here that this is impossible. We're trying to do something that's impossible. So maybe we should have a rethink and see if we could have a realistic goal for our education system. But I haven't heard a hint of that. They still believe it, even though the evidence is clearly that it can't be closed, that they just can't do it. Yeah. Just on the same topic, there's a story on the BBC website today. A teacher in Perth, well, he would have been struck off, but he took himself off the teaching register because he'd been caught like doing some coursework or doing some assessments for a pupil for a National 4 exam. Now, National 4, this is what you do when you're 15. It's all teacher assessed. It's all done in the school. You can retake the test as many times as you like. So it's wide open to corruption. If you're the teacher in that situation, they go, oh, no, I've got to get my class through this. Right, there's 30 in the class. Right, that's on my to-do list. I've got to do it. Right, so let's do it the first time. Okay, right, 20 of them have passed. Right, I'm getting really bored of this. Right, I'll give them a bit more help to try and get them through, and a bit more help, and a bit more help. And then maybe just a bit of a nudge while they're actually doing the test. I mean, wide open to corruption. So that the scale of cheating on these things will be astronomical. I mean, every school, there'll be multiple instances where teachers are bending the rules just to save the time it gets for them to get through. But this is one teacher who just seems to take it a little bit too far and has been struck off for it. But I just thought, I've got a great deal of sympathy for that teacher. But it's so widespread. The system is designed for widespread cheating, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, we've got a lot of the answers. We're going to get back to sort of basics and proper didactic teaching. Less of this child-centered, student-centered learning. Move away from that. Cover the basics. Remove all that silly relationships and sex education. And free up the curriculum to sort of get on in a disciplined manner to develop our children and to develop our future. And as you say, the government are running around setting these crazy objectives, which are self-defeating, and they're almost like hamsters running around on a hamster wheel. Yeah. Just to meet these broad aims of equality. And stop, richer kids getting on in life and widening the gap. There are much easier solutions, and I think everyone's going around ticking boxes in the Scottish education system.
Yeah,
this once great system that the whole world looked up to, and it's running on empty. Yeah.
And there's no awareness that it's functioning on a certain philosophy of education, and that there are other ones available that could be considered. It's as though like almost everyone is completely unaware of that. They're just within the narrow confines of educational debate in Scotland, and that's it. Right. Okay. Let's move on. How about Roe v. Wade? I don't think I've spoken about that on the live stream.
Okay.
What's your take? What's happening there?
Of course, this is really big. This is a big story, and it seems as if it was the news that the Roe v. Wade decision by the Supreme Court in America would be overturned. was leaked deliberately, and then we had that series of riots in America. And I just wanted to reflect on what might be the impact here if when the judgment's finally made, and it looks like there are 5 solid sort of Republican Supreme Court judges that will support the overturning of the Roe v. Wade decision, which was a disgraceful decision, and has led to countless abortions and an abortion mentality. And I was thinking about the effect in Scotland, and already they're manning the battlements, and they're seeking, certainly in America, to run a summer of discontent. And I can see the same momentum being built up here in Scotland to protect women's rights to reproductive services, to protect women's rights to undertake a DIY abortion at home. It's utterly disgraceful, dangerous, and all sorts of sort of health outcomes that just not considered by the woman, and the woman's not presented with the sufficient data to make an informed choice. So I think we'll get barreling towards us an increase in the velocity of the anti-life mentality, because I'm starting to see it in terms of the sacrifice of these children, our future generations, over so many years after Roe v. Wade and the 1967 Abortion Act in this country, that it's almost sort of a quasi-religious, it's almost like a sacrament where they're offering up these future generations as a sacrifice to feminism, to destruction of male, the dominance of the male in society. So it's almost it's like a religion to maintain this, and certainly for the population, the people who see people as pollution, and the growing population as a danger to the world ecology, that for them, the control of world population is vital. So I see a war. A war-like situation emerging in Scotland, where the same rhetoric, the same manning of the barricades by the anti-life movement will start to form during the summer, and of course abortion will go on in America. It's just the decision making will be delegated to the states, and many of the states, I think it's something like half of them, are going to totally restrict abortion. And of course, we've got these employers saying we'll finance our employees to travel to another state to get an abortion. And Starbucks is one of these employers. So I do encourage any listener or viewer of this, never ever to go again into a Starbucks. I mean, I stopped going in there, years ago. But start boycotting these big corporates. So I suppose that's the point I wanted to make: is or ask the question: what's going to happen? What will be happening in Scotland? Will they be ramping up the propaganda? And of course, the SNP is a vociferously pro-abortion party, as are all the main parties in Scotland. And they're all considering abortion up until birth as a policy, which is absolutely outrageous. And like most moral issues, nobody's saying very much about it, except for your good self, Richard, and the members of the Scottish Family Party. So I don't know what your take is about how this might develop.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Starbucks. I'll meet someone in Starbucks if that's what they suggest, but I try and avoid them. Neil, our Edinburgh chairman, he will never go into Starbucks if we can help it. They pay for transgender surgery for their workers and whatever. And I think they think they're just doing their business good by taking those stances. But they need to realize that that's not entirely the case. Just another snippet as well before I go into responding to your main point. I happened to flipping through radio channels the other day, radio stations. I just listened to Radio 1 for a few seconds, and there's a song playing, and it was a woman basically singing, forget any idea that I'm going to have any kids with you. So it was like that was her pitch to potential boyfriends, potential partners. I think it was, I'm not going to hold your baby. But I listened to enough to get the thing, and that was definitely the theme. I mean, you wouldn't have heard that not too long ago. That would have just been seen as a bizarre thing. But now that's quite fashionable. In terms of the pro-abortion side, getting more heated, ramping things up. I've only just thought about this while you were saying it. I mean, buffer zones. How long have there been vigils outside abortion clinics in Scotland? I mean, decades, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it only now that they're going hysterical? I mean, every time a couple of women stand there with a placard, it's debated in the Scottish Parliament virtually. And so, getting this hysterical response. So I think that's a sign that they're a little bit worried. They're thinking, there's maybe trouble in store here. We need to go on the front foot to try and stamp on this. So I think that's a good sign. They're expecting it, and I think it's going to come as well. Another thing with Roe v. Wade as well. I mean, I'm sure Nicola Sturgeon's expressed her horror at it. But what it amounted to was devolving abortion to the states. Abortion in the UK was devolved to Scotland a few years ago. I don't remember Nicola Sturgeon throwing her hands up in horror at that decision. So that's what Roe v. Wade is. It's just devolving the decision to the states. The same has happened in the UK with regard to Scotland. Abortion's been devolved to Scotland. So it's the same thing. And everyone was perfectly happy with it in that case. I only thought about that today. Another thing I say with Roe v. Wade, I really do have question marks over the United States Constitution, the way it operates with this. That this decision obviously seems to be influenced by how many judges the different sides can get onto the Supreme Court. And I think if that's what's determining it, then the Supreme Court isn't functioning. This should be the elected houses that are making these decisions, not a court of law. I think the same for the Supreme Court in the United Kingdom as well. But if it goes ahead and a lot of states in the United States introduce pro-life policies, I think that's great. I think the issue is coming up the agenda worldwide, and we're going to do everything we can to push it up the agenda here as well. And I think the wind's behind us on that one.
Yeah,
I think that's quite unusual in our society to feel that the cultural trends are swinging our way a little bit. But I think on the pro-life issue, they are. And in the election, I think it was 9% of people were willing to give what I would say was a positive preference vote to a party that said pro-life on the ballot paper.
That was very encouraging, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. That with those preference votes, the likelihood was, the most important thing I think was that they were aware of us, mm-hmm. and that with that pro-life statement, along with pro-marriage and pro-family on the ballot paper, you were expecting people to run a mile, but about 9% are saying, "Yeah, I might consider you. I know about you. I know your policies. Next time I might consider voting for you." So that was very encouraging, rather than them putting us down as their 6th, 7th, 8th preference, which means no, I don't know anything about you, or I don't like you at all, and I would never ever vote for you. So that was most encouraging.
Yeah. Right, what's your take on the latest Partygate things? We've got this photograph of Boris Johnson. I'm not sure how much it adds to the story, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, it certainly keeps running, and where are they getting these photographs from? They seem to be releasing them, at critical times. I think the Tories thought, well, we've seen the worst of this, and then suddenly the new photo, and I did see that Downing Street, was issued with the most police warnings and fines was the address in the whole of the United Kingdom that had the most fines and beat some of these big illegal sort of house music and rapping, whatever the young get up to these days, where thousands are appearing for these raves. So 10 Downing Street beats the local rave in terms of these legal actions. So it seems to keep sort of rumbling away under the surface, and if these things don't go away, it can spell big dangers for the Tory party.
There was a student in England who organized. Well, he put on Facebook, "Let's all gather for a big snowball fight in the park." He reckons he was just joking, but then it really took off. Lots of people were saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to come." So he deleted it. But he was prosecuted under COVID restrictions and fined £10,000 for putting on Facebook, "Let's have a snowball fight in the park." So I think by that standard, Boris Johnson, etc., seems to be getting off quite lightly. I say with Boris Johnson, though, you know what sort of character he is, and that's what he's going to be like. He's not someone who's going to stick to the rules. He's going to be someone, the atmosphere in Downing Street is going to be a bit boozy, a bit, rebellious. Let's bend the rules a bit. We're all in it together, because that's the sort of person he is. So it's inevitable that's going to be the atmosphere that's created. So the Conservative Party, in voting for Boris Johnson, should have known this is exactly what's going to happen, and it has. Douglas Ross's position is, I think, just I don't know what the word is, feeble. It's got no credibility. Because he said Boris Johnson should resign. He said that when he thought he was going to have to resign. Then he said, "Oh no, he can stay because of the war in Ukraine." Now he's saying, "Oh, Boris Johnson needs to explain his actions." It's just, for some of the Scottish Conservatives, I just think it's suicidal to keep criticising your national leader. It's so short-sighted. Yeah. I think they think, all right, Boris Johnson's a bit unpopular, so if we criticise him, it'll make us more popular. But surely it's the opposite. You're the Conservative Party. He's the UK leader of the Conservative Party. And if you keep criticising him, you're basically saying, "Oh, you don't want to be voting for the Conservatives." I mean, they're just all over the place.
Yeah. Oh well, we know that. I mean, I like the idea of the snowball fight. Perhaps we can, to get more people to the national conference, you can say it starts off with a snowball fight and see how many hundreds we can get there.
Mm-hmm. I think with you said about where the photograph's coming from. It is, someone's got a lot of patience to resist releasing that sort of photograph for so long. That's someone with a pretty strategic mind, isn't it? Or good financial sense, whatever. If they've waited for the highest bid, but that's interesting. That's interesting. Now, a couple of people have been asking in the comments about. Well, let's just answer that one for a start. Does the Scottish Family Party promote the fact that COVID-19 was a hoax? No. No. It was a real illness. We might disagree with the response to it in some ways. Maybe would have taken a different policies in response to it. But overall, I wouldn't describe it as a hoax. Right, how about that? You're talking about the recent decision of the Church of Scotland to allow ministers to conduct same-sex marriages. The first thing to say about this is that the Scottish Family Party does not have a policy on same-sex marriage. People often assume that we do, but we don't. We considered having a policy on it, but we decided not to because we felt it would become like our signature policy. It'd be what you get asked about all the time. And also, there are a significant number of people in the party who don't, who agree with, well, yeah, they think the same-sex marriage should be sanctioned by the state. So they don't, so they wouldn't agree with the policy of stopping same-sex marriage legally. So we don't have a policy on it, but the Church of Scotland has gone down this road. What's your response to that, Michael, as a Catholic?
Well, it looks like the Catholic Church is the one of the few that sort of resisting this, and we do see it as a it's a fake marriage. I mean, marriage is between a man and a woman, and for the prime purpose for begetting children, and anything else doesn't meet that definition. And best of luck to these other forms, but it's not a marriage, and it does demean proper marriage. And I'm saddened for the Church of Scotland, and certainly the minority of the ministers who disagree with this decision. I gather they're still going to have some protection, but invariably the pressure that comes onto them and the lobbying and the accusations, I think their position will eventually be sort of pushed out of that church, and they'll just have to accept this sort of modern view of the world, and this modern view of marriage. So an extremely sad day for the Church of Scotland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of the more conservative ministers, congregations even have left the Church of Scotland over the last few years over this issue, because it's been through various stages. I think some of their biggest and wealthiest congregations have left. So the numerical situation for the Church of Scotland in terms of attendance and finances is disastrous. I mean, they really are looking at catastrophic decline continuing in the foreseeable future, now, which is very unfortunate. But they did get the congratulations to the SNP. Mm-hmm. They said they were very pleased. So I say, the SNP, whose policy it is to corrupt children with a message of sexual promiscuity, transgenderism, etc. The SNP, who denies virtually every aspect of distinctly Christian moral teaching on every issue. If you get the congratulations of the SNP on something like that, it's not a great sign. I think what you said earlier, that's the point I would say from the Scottish Family Party point of view. They can call two men, two women, they can call it a marriage or not, but whether they call it that or not, it's still children should be brought up by their mother and father, and that's the ideal. The fact that they call it a marriage doesn't mean that that's going to be a lot of children not knowing where they came from, feeling a sense of dislocation, not knowing their origins, and missing either a male or female parent figure. And the other thing the Church of Scotland's confirmed at the General Assembly is their approval for a conversion therapy ban. So the Church of Scotland wants it to be illegal to counsel someone from the standpoint of traditional Christian moral viewpoint, which again is quite bizarre, quite shocking. I mean, that is a clear point. I mean, sometimes people say, "Oh, the Scottish Family Party, you're a Christian party." Well, I mean, is the Church of Scotland, is that not the main embodiment of Christianity? I mean, they're like the Lib Dems with a dog collar on there. I mean, we're very different from them. So I mean, that's part of the reason why we don't call ourselves a Christian party as well, because anything you say, there's always going to be a group of Christians saying, "Oh no, that's we're Christians and we don't believe that." So yeah, I would agree with you, Michael. I think it's very unfortunate for the Church of Scotland, but I think that they do just go with the flow. They're swept along by the tide of culture, and churches that do that, they believe that it's the route to popularity and growth. They really think people are going to think, "Wow, if I go along to church, I'm going to hear exactly the same as I get when I sit at home and watch the BBC. So you know what? I'm going to go along to church." I mean, it's fantasy. It's fantasy. People are not thinking, "I would really love to go to church if only they said the same as the SNP on all the important moral issues. If just they would do that, then I'd be there in a shot." No, it's fantasy. Then anyway, so right, Fraser, that's a little discussion about that. Do put comments in if you got anything to say about that. Right, quarter now. I've got a few more issues to talk about. Yeah, where's it? That's this one. Now, at our recent rally, we had Zoe Carter, who writes children's books, was there with a stall selling a few books, and she gave a quick summary of this book. I was quite interested by it. It brought up an issue that I hadn't really thought about before. And the basic point of the book is that She feels that children are often given the message that you should be friends with everyone. That's the ideal. So if you're a good person, what you should try and do is be friends with everyone. And the message of the book is, well, basically, you need to be a bit more discerning than that. You can be kind and respectful to everyone, but maybe it's not a good idea to be a friend to everyone. Because some people, if you're their friends, they're going to lead you in a bad direction. They're going to get you into trouble. So if there's someone who you can see is going to lead you in the wrong direction, then that's not the person to be your friend. Let them get in their trouble on their own. I remember when I was a housemaster, I'd sometimes say that to a boy who was getting led by a difficult character or a bad crowd or whatever. I'd say, leave them to get into their own problems, their own trouble. You leave them to it, and when they land in trouble, you'll be on the outside of it. So I thought that was a good message, an interesting book. Matthew Mouse, I'm sure it'll be available on eBay by Zoe Carter. What do you think about that message? Had you thought about that issue before in terms of message to children, Michael? That was a new one on me.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed her presentation at the rally in Edinburgh, and it's beautifully produced and lovely illustrations and a powerful message. We want to be liked at school. We tend to follow the stronger characters who can often lead us in the wrong directions, and these are difficult decisions for children to make. And it does break this general viewpoint that we should be friends with everyone and nice to everyone and treat everybody equally. But sometimes we have to drop these bad apples because of their bad influence.
Yeah, the way I've put it sometimes, I've said, if you're being a good influence on them, then okay, fair enough. There's maybe some mileage in that. If they're being a bad influence on you, then that's not helping either. Mm-hmm. But that was interesting. Right, another issue following the elections. Now, the election results are in, the councillors are elected. So often no party has an overall majority. So there's been various trading behind the scenes to form coalitions. Now, I think Anna Sawa said that Labour, I think I'm right in saying this, he said Labour will not go into any coalitions with other parties. But I think basically in some councils, the Labour contingent have said, oh, well, forget what you say, we're going to do it in any case. So various coalitions have been formed with all sorts of combinations of parties. But it's been fascinating seeing the response, because it seems like virtually every party regards any coalition that they're not in as just an act of treachery. It's just absolutely, it's immoral. They're traitors. They've abandoned their principles. So the SNP say it when there's a Labour Conservative coalition. The Conservatives say it when there's a Labour SNP coalition, etc., etc. I mean, it just seems completely bizarre that they can't see through it and can't see that every party has taken the same line, that anyone else's coalition is just some sort of dastardly plot to defy the electorate. It's really bizarre. Have you seen any of that sort of comment on social media?
I was just thinking that I don't know what's happened here, whether they've actually formed within Stirling Council, whether they formed what are the coalescing parties. But it is also symptomatic of the whole local authority thing, where it's very collegiate, isn't it? They all seem to come together and agree on everything. Yeah. I mean, we know that from the national politics that everybody's progressive, everybody's sort of leftish, and it doesn't matter what grouping you put together, you're going to get the same result. And there's no, and it's only the independents and sort of voices like ours that could make a difference, and can really start challenging things. So that's an interesting development, Richard. I'll definitely check what's happening here locally. What about in Edinburgh? What's the setup in Edinburgh City of Edinburgh Council?
Right, the Lib Dems did well. Well, I should know this, shouldn't I? I think the Lib Dems and the SNP, I think, have now got the coalition, or the Greens in it as well, maybe. I can't remember exactly. I did know that, but I've forgotten. Yeah.
Well,
in terms of the elections as well, just if anyone's watching from the Western Isles, there are going to be 2 by-elections in the Western Isles, I understand soon, because there's 2 wards where they didn't have enough candidates to fill the number of councillors. In other words, anyone on the Western Isles who'd have filled in the paperwork to be a councillor would have automatically become a councillor in those 2 wards. And they could have been a councillor for 5 years and got paid £90,000. I mean, someone could have done it and just thought, I'm going to fill it in and get paid £90,000. I'm never going to turn up to anything. Because I don't think there's any process for getting rid of councillors if they don't do anything. Anyway, but they're coming up. So if you're watching this on the Western Isles and you're a family party member and you think about standing as a councillor in one of those wards, then get in touch. And you never know. The other thing to say about the elections, the by-elections come along at a reasonable rate for council seats, and maybe for Westminster and Scottish parliamentary seats as well. Whenever they come up now, we're going to be poised, ready to fight them. We've got 84 people who've been a candidate the last time. So if a council by-election comes up, there's a pretty good chance we'll have a candidate within that council area ready to go. And we will go. We will go. We'll contest those as often as we can.
Well, I think I might consider relocating to the Western Isles.
Now, I think the vacancies, they're in the southern portion.
Okay.
So there's maybe people thinking, do they really want to go? I mean, how far is it from down in, Barra up to Stornoway? Is it 60 miles, or how many ferries does it take? So maybe people just thought, that's a big hassle. That really want to go up there.
Yeah, but when can you find a ferry when you need one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's one in Shetland as well, where there's a vacancy. There weren't enough applicants for the job. So that's if anyone's interested in any of those places, let us know. We would support your campaign. Right, just a few minutes left. Right, do you want to tell us about this case you were telling me about earlier? I hadn't really followed the case. This is about the person, was it working for some sort of counselling service?
That's right. It was James Esses. He was a trained lawyer, and this story interested me. And he moved from the legal profession to training as a psychotherapist, and he also offered his time to Childline for counselling, counselling in confidence these children. And I think he did the job for about five years, totally voluntary, in the evenings while he was doing his main study. And he found that he was getting so many calls from young children on the gender dysphoria issue. And then quite naturally, he said, well, look, the calls are shooting up. Something seems to be going on. They're very young and they want to make total changes to their bodies, and these medical interventions, which are really quite catastrophic. And he started to look for a policy around these numbers and what should these counsellors be saying at Childline. And he didn't think it was right to just accept their view and counsel them towards changing their gender. And when he had reached that position, he was immediately fired by Childline. Now, I mean, I think Childline is an organization which was set up with a great deal of bravado by Esther Ransom. And I think it's an instrument that seeks to divide families and break up families. And in a small number of cases, there'll be children who are sort of suffering abuse. They're in difficult positions, and Childline does a good job. But I think they're once again one of this group of specialists that know better than parents about what's best for their kids. And so this chap was fired, and he's bringing a case to get reinstated. And I believe it's affected his ability to complete his studies in psychotherapy. And he's getting a lot of publicity. He's running a crowdfunder to support his legal costs.
Mm-hmm.
So that case sort of struck me. I mean, it's down in England, but he quite rightly said, look, the data is telling me there's a big problem here. The number of children are increasing over the 5 years. What should be our policy? And they said, well, you always counsel towards what they want, as if children know exactly what they want. These immature minds, and he felt they were obviously being channeled in that direction and pushed in this direction. And he thought it was wrong, that he should counsel them towards this complete gender change. So once again, he's persecuted, but he's fighting back. Good for him. It's a story that the listeners should look up. And I did see that he was speaking last week at the Family Research Institute, or whatever they call themselves now.
Family Education Trust.
Yes, Family Education Trust. He was speaking at their conference, and I'm looking forward to to watch that on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, what did you think? What do you think of that story, Richard?
Well, the first thing that came to mind, the Childline. That's under the auspices of the NSPCC, isn't it? I made a video a couple of years ago about goings on in the NSPCC. Where they appointed this sort of, this is maybe not right every detail, this is the gist of it, this sort of transgender porn star as their ambassador. And then this transgender sort of porn star was trying to make personal individual contact with people, with children through Childline. And then they had the person they had in charge of like liaising with their stars, with their representatives. He was caught doing, I won't go into details, things he shouldn't have been doing at work. There's more than that. There's more of it. So it's rotten to the core in terms of values. And I think for a lot of people, it's quite hard for them to get the head around things like in NSPCC. That's just, until a few years ago, I would just have had entirely positive views of that. It's a charity that helps children. Simple as that. But it's not as simple as that. Like so many other organizations, they've been taken over by radical activists who have just imposed a really extreme ideology on it. And are they more concerned about promoting that ideology than they are about actually helping children? Well, I suspect that that might well be the case. I mean, just to finish on a lighter note, when I was a teacher, when I was a housemaster in particular, if a boy complained about something, everyone said, oh, it's not fair, sometimes I'd say, oh, I'll go in for a Childline then. And then that's sort of my standard. One time, a boy came back and said, he did, he went off and did it. So I thought, oh no, what's going to happen here? But nothing happened. I got away with that one as well. So probably that's on some database somewhere, Childline.
Yeah.
But it is frightening, isn't it? How just organization after organization just capitulates to it. And I think it reaches a tipping point where people who don't really care one way or the other, they realize that it's in their self-interest to go with the flow and go along with that. And once people have realized that, the people who don't go along with it, well, they'll leave. And it just totally takes over. You get the monoculture and you end up with things like that. Someone gets fired for basically expressing concern for children.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, this is this group think, isn't it? That there to break out of the herd is too tough. And
I'll tell you what, I bet they get government funding.
Yeah, they do.
I bet they do. So our inverted commas conservative government, what are they doing about it? Because they should be going along and saying, right, you sort this out or no funding for you. But they won't.
Yeah,
they won't. Yeah. They're trying. The Conservatives, they try and make sort of slightly conservative noises about things from time to time. When it actually comes to the crunch of how they run things, how things operate, then they're not interested. They're not interested. Because there should be a queue of MPs dealing with this. The government should be telling the organisation, look, you can't do this, or you could forget your funding. But it won't happen. It won't happen. Right, Michael, our time has flown. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thanks for everyone watching, all for your comments. So we didn't engage with very many. We got through a few, but see you here next week, same time, same place. And right, good night, Michael, and thanks to everyone for watching.
Good night, Richard. Thank you. Good night, everyone.